cansada.
Estoy muy cansada. If I could go back in time, I would use Duolingo quite differently than how I have in the past to learn my target languages, French and Spanish, but mostly French. If today was day one of using Duolingo to learn French or Spanish, I would take out a pencil and a notebook so I could take some notes. Now, I'm sure that some of you are thinking to yourself, Joshua, why in the world would you be taking notes if you're using an application to learn a language? Everything is right in front of you on your phone or on the computer. Taking notes is absolutely useless. I used to think the same way, but it turns out it is not useless and that there are many benefits to writing when you are going through your Duolingo lessons. So what exactly am I taking notes on? I would take notes on the guidebook, and previously this was called tips before we got the new Duolingo update. Currently, I am looking at the Spanish course for Duolingo. I'm looking at Unit 2, Get Around in a City. So if I click on the guidebook, I have some key phrases for Get Around the City.
El taxi está aquí.
El taxi está aquí.
Mi pasaporte está en el hotel.
Mi pasaporte está en el hotel. And then at the bottom of this page here, we have this little tip, which is explaining the difference between está and es. And this is quite important for Spanish if you don't know yet. Está and es both mean is, so what's the difference? If you want to say where someone or something is located, use está. You also use está when you're talking about something that's only temporarily true. Meanwhile, es is used to describe the qualities of a person or a thing. So this is something that I would definitely write down. I would go to a fresh page in my notebook, and then I'll write down Unit 2 guidebook, get around a city, or get around in a city. Also, I would write down the tip that I just explained, está versus es. And this wouldn't even take more than 2 minutes, so it's not like I'm wasting my time. But this specific guidebook is pretty short, so if other ones are longer, I could just maybe not write every single detail, but just try to shorten it up a little bit. Now, I would do this because I am very guilty of just blowing past many of my French lessons and not really absorbing what I was learning and just trying to get through as many lessons as I could throughout the day. So that's something that I would definitely want to change because I know that I can learn actually a lot faster and learn a lot more if I'm focusing on these different tips and examples in the guidebook because they explain a lot of the grammar concepts that I will be seeing in the lessons that I'm completing. Of course, I and any other language learner can just complete their Duolingo course without actually looking at this guidebook and still have a decent understanding of the different grammar concepts that they are learning. But with something as complex as this concept here, está versus es for Spanish, especially for native English speakers, I can only understand how many lessons it would take for you to start to understand it just a little bit. But instead, you could at least just take the time and review this nice little tip and be less confused right off the bat. Another reason why I would take notes while using Duolingo is because I know that when I am writing down these different grammar concepts and sentences, it helps to stick in my mind. I don't know about you, but just the very act of writing down what I am seeing just helps to retain that information a lot more. Additionally, let's say that I am feeling very lazy one day and I don't want to go on Duolingo at all and complete any lessons. Well, then I have all of my notes that I have on my notebook so I don't have to do that and I can just have a review session instead. And when I finish a unit, you can only imagine how many different example sentences and just words in general that I could be taking notes on. And something I even thought about doing is just taking not just notes of the different sentences that I'm seeing in the individual lessons, but then also just taking notes of full Duolingo stories. Of course, that would take more time off my hands, but at the very least, it's just another option that I have if I want to do it. Now, maybe some of you are saying to yourself, Joshua, you are doing way too much work, and that is the whole idea. I'm trying to force myself to be more of an active language learner because I can be very lazy at times. If you have watched some of my videos, then you probably know this by now, and I'm pretty good at procrastinating as well. So this actually makes me I would say just take the time to go through the lessons, not blow through them, and just so I can keep a streak for the most part. But I'm trying to actually learn the grammar for, French or for Spanish, and to dedicate a sufficient amount of time to learn my language. I know that my Duolingo lessons aren't going to explain every little detail of a language, like grammar, for example, but that's why I buy something like this, a Spanish grammar book. And if you need a resource like this one, head to the description box of this video so you can find an affiliate link and you can buy it off of Amazon. Another thing that I would do differently is actually read some of the different comments in the discussion forum because they can be quite helpful. So I was just working on one question here and I got the answer incorrect. So the correct answer was sí, gracias. And if I go to the discussion board, someone explains why this was the case or why this was the answer. Someone wrote, yep, monosyllables have no accents by default unless it collides with different words, though the pronunciation is the same. In this case, sí with an accent or the I means yes, whereas sí without an accent mark means if or whether. So that was actually extremely helpful. Complete one lesson a day. Now this seems very simple, but for me this is actually very important that I actually start to do because again, I am quite lazy, and last year I definitely was lazy when I was doing my French Duolingo lessons because I think I had about at least a month or 2 months. I can't remember how long it was, but I was only maybe doing one Duolingo lesson a week. And sometimes I had 2 or 3 weeks where I wasn't even doing any Duolingo lessons at all. So for me, this is less about just getting as many points as possible and also just trying to rank high on the leaderboards, but it's so I can develop some good habits, so I can develop being consistent, and so I can develop my discipline, so I won't be that lazy again, because I could have learned so much during that time that I was being lazy. And this actually transferred as well to other resources. So since I was being so lazy with Duolingo, just completing one lesson that doesn't take that much time, I also wasn't consuming a lot of YouTube videos in French, and also wasn't listening to a lot of songs in French or reading in French, just because that laziness just carried over. No more freezing streaks, because really, am I actually being consistent if I just have so many frozen streaks and I'm not actually completing lessons every single day? It's not the worst thing in the world, but again, I don't want to get into the habit of not using Duolingo and completing these lessons every single day.
Cocinar es muy divertido, Lynn.
Cocinar es muy divertido, Lynn.
Yo no quiero cocinar.
Yo no quiero cocinar.
Estoy muy cansada.
Estoy muy cansada.
¿Quieres comer en un restaurante, Bea?
¿Quieres comer en un restaurante, Bea?
No, yo quiero cocinar.
No, yo quiero cocinar. One thing that I have learned throughout my language learning journey is that speaking is a must. Even if I'm just using an application like Duolingo, I still need to practice speaking. I really have to push myself to speak out loud and then also to repeat everything that I'm hearing, because I know that this is really going to help me to improve my pronunciation, and then also it's going to develop my overall fluency skills. So it's something that I always need to keep in mind when I am using Duolingo, because again, since it's an application, usually I'm not speaking out loud. I'm not speaking to myself in Spanish or French when I'm just, on my phone, just on whatever application, or usually I'm not. So that's why when I'm using Duolingo, I need to make sure that I'm doing that all the time. I don't only want to remember what I am learning with Duolingo when I'm using the application, but I want to be able to remember everything that I'm learning, or as much as possible, when I am not using this application. And the way that I would do this is by actually using what I am learning. So one thing that I would do to accomplish this is think throughout the day about everything that I just learned. So instead of just going from, let's say, one lesson at 8 p.m. last night to one lesson tonight at 8 p.m., I'm going to be thinking about the lesson from 8 p.m. last night all throughout today. So that's going to help me be able to retain a lot of that information that I have been learning. So I'm thinking about these words throughout the day, then I'm also trying to create the different sentences as well with the different words that I'm learning. So basically, I'm just almost having a conversation with myself, almost like this story that I just read out loud. And then, of course, instead of just thinking, then I would go to speaking as well. So I would also speak everything that I'm thinking. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think the tips that I have shared in this video would help you learn your target language with Duolingo? Now, watch this next video y hasta luego.